7. Going home. You're wearing yourself out with all this searching. Come home and rest. Sometimes, even when we can hear the voice of the beloved beckoning us home, we hesitate, even as we ache to find that place of belonging to that which is larger than ourselves, to the meaning in our lives and the sacred presence within and around us. We resist the call that would take us there. Sometimes we keep searching to avoid going home, to avoid facing unspoken and unresolved feelings we may have about the reality of living in this world, about the sacred mystery that creates and sustains this reality. Sitting in prayer alone in the wilderness on the 3rd day of my vision quest, I wonder, to whom am I praying? To what do I call? The sacred presence that surrounds and sustains us excludes nothing, but how we name that to which we call shapes the answer we receive. The home that welcomes us. Thinking of the stones I was told as a child about God, I'm surprised to find myself thinking, not to the God of Abraham and Isaac. I will not call to a God who would test a man's loyalty by asking him to kill his son on the altar of sacrifice. I sit on the earth and remember the story of Abraham, of how he and his wife Sarah, well past childbearing age, prayed to have a child, and Sarah gave birth to Isaac. Do you know what it's like when you wanted forever? When what you wanted forever is right there in your hand? When the thing that you thought was impossible happens? It's hard to believe, sometimes difficult to really receive. You celebrate and give thanks, but sometimes somewhere deep inside you wait for it to be taken away. For the power that brought the impossible in your life to say, oops, that was a mistake. And then take it back. That's what I think happened to Abraham. He prayed for the impossible and his prayer was answered. But I think he feared from the beginning that God would take away what had been given. No, we all have reason to believe we're undeserving. No, we all know of 1,000 instances when we have failed to be kind or courageous. Abraham sent his son Ishmael and Hagar, and the maidservant who bore him into the desert when Sarah gave birth to Isaac. Somehow Hagar had been worthy of sharing his bed and bearing his child, but not worthy of being in his household once his wife had a son. There are those in this world still angry about abandonment. Did Abraham think of Hagar and Ishmael when he thought he had heard God telling him to take young Isaac up into the mountain and sacrifice him on the altar? Was it the voice of God, or was it the fear? The voice that tells us we're unworthy of the unearned blessings in our lives. For years I prayed for the husband of my heart and hearth, flip-flopping between diligently searching and vowing never to date again. Eventually I came into a quiet acceptance of my aloneness, but I still longed for the intimacy of being seen and loved by another. And then there was Jeff. During the winter before my quest, Jeff and I had decided to take a short trip and stay one night at a small inn north of Toronto. Exhausted from too much travel, I needed to get to the wilderness. Arriving in the afternoon, we bundle up in long johns and layers of polar fleece and head out into 5,000 acres of wilderness that surrounds the inn. It's well below freezing. Speaking of below freezing, I need fire. had 2 of them. I don't know where I dropped the other one at. Gotta bring others. Okay. Arriving in the afternoon, we bundle up in long johns and layers of polar fleece and head out into the 5,000 acres of wilderness that surrounds the inn. It's well below freezing. The air is crisp and clear. We walk side by side on the trail through the bush, listening only to the crunch of our boots on hard-packed snow. Suddenly, we come to a bit of clearing. A cliff and a gray granite topped, with dark evergreen rises to our right, and the snow stretches out before us, unmarked and glistening. I stop walking, and I stand still in the dying light of the afternoon, watching the small clouds of moisture drift through the cold air each time I exhale, and my weariness catches up with me. I feel an ache run through my limbs, a pull to take my body to the earth for rest, to soak in the silence of the wilderness and let it wash away the bone-deep fatigue caused by too many anonymous hotel rooms and too few quiet moments on the unpaved earth. Jeff stopped next to me. I just need to do something for a few minutes, I say to him. Unable and unwilling to offer more explanation, I lie down, stretching out on my back on the snow-covered ground. I let my tiredness take me, and the earth hold me, and I let go of all the places where I've been holding on. All the places where I've been getting ready for the next round of airport lineups, bookstores filled with unfamiliar, expectant faces, and conversations with friendly, inquiring strangers. Tears of relief slowly trickle from the corner of my eyes, hot against my cold skin. Jeff stands for a moment and watches me. "Are you okay?" he asks quietly. I nod. He waits for a moment, and then he does the one thing that lets me know he is indeed the man for whom I have prayed for so many years. Later, I think of other men I have loved, and imagine what some of them might have done. Some of them probably would have become anxious and concerned that I would catch a cold, insisting that I get up right away. Some of them would have walked on slowly, perhaps waited for me up ahead. Some of them would have called me crazy, and at least one of them, a therapist, would have knelt down and asked well-meaning questions, hoping to help me process whatever emotions were moving through me. All understandable responses. But Jeff did none of them. Jeff just lay down next to me, stretching out on his back in the snow, his shoulder lightly touching mine, silently watching the sky with me. Do you know what it's like when you've wanted forever? It's right there in your hand. When the thing you thought was impossible happens. I imagine now that I know how Abraham felt, how he anticipated having that which is so precious to him taken from him. For the first time, on the third day of my vision quest, I realized yet another of my unconscious motives for being out here in the wilderness, determined to stay and pray and fast for 40 days. I'm afraid that God, the God of my childhood, the God of Abraham, will find me unworthy of the blessings of my life. I want to prove to this God that I'm not grown complacent. I'm not taking for granted the good fortune that has befallen me. I want to pay what I've been given so that it will not be taken away. I want to be worthy of a love that survived 30 years of absence. Worthy of a man that will lie down in the snow with me in sub-zero temperatures, no questions asked, and just silently fill the earth and watch the sky with me. I'm neither a theologian nor a biblical scholar. I'm sure wiser minds can offer more root explanations for the story of Abraham and Isaac. But as I sit here alone in the bush, praying and meditating, the story comes to me now and offers me an awareness of some of my own unconscious fears, and for this I'm grateful. I've not thought of this story for years, but I remember that even as a child I could never quite believe that the voice of Abraham heard demanding that he sacrifice his son to prove his loyalty to God was in fact the voice of God. It was just too inconsistent with my experience of the present that within and around me, the sacred mystery that has always said to me in 1,000 ways lived. Sometimes sacrifices are required. A choice for one thing often means leaving another option behind. Sometimes we must give up our attachment to our ideas of how things are or should be in order to hear that which is larger than ourselves speak. But these are sacrifices not of this life, but for life. Choices that don't come close to the spirit of sacrificing an innocent child to prove blind obedience. If God had any part in this story, I think it was in providing the young goat for the sacrifice so that Abraham's fears and feelings of unworthiness did not result in his son's death. I sit with my own mixed motives and viewpoints, and I experience and know the beloved to be a consistent source of loving grace, and yet I come out to the wilderness unconsciously hoping to placate the God that demands blood sacrifices, just in case such a God exists. Am I hedging my bets, or do I really believe and experience the sacred mystery as unconditionally loving? The question forms as a small hard knot of anxiety in my stomach, and my hands begin to sweat. I get up and begin to move around my campsite. A spark of something dark and forbidden runs through my body like a small electrical shock. A pinprick on fire. My jaw clenches, and the muscles of my arms and limbs contract into what I realize is anger, and I begin to pace and ask out loud, what am I so angry about? Allowing the anger I so often repress or deny to wash through me, I feel the images of outrage carried on a wave of heat. I'm angry about a lot of little things. My son once again removing my TV remote's batteries to power his video game, the garbage being put out before the cat litter is clean, the person who repeatedly puts her car in my parking spot, Jem's lack of awareness that laundry can be done in an automatic washing machine, eliminating the need to go down to the river and beat it on the rock, where every single piece of clothing in the household linen is filthy. But I'm so angry about the big things. The death of the 10,000 children every day from starvation when we have the means to feed the world. The short-sightedness and the greed that prompts them to maximize private profit at the cost of poisoning the water and air to sustain us all. Leaders who convince men and women to sacrifice their sons and daughters in wars launched in the name of freedom or democracy when their ancestors had begun, or used armed conflicts to acquire and increase their own power and wealth. And as I pace with the particulars, letting the feelings rise from my belly, I feel a deeper level of anger that fuels my smaller frustrations. A kind of ever-present rage that colors my view of the world and affects my desire and ability to go home to the beloved I know and rest. I'm angry with God. I'm angry the sacred and mysterious life force that has created and sustains the world. Why create a place where incredible suffering is possible and probable, where we can and often do choose to do great harm to ourselves and each other? Why not create us as fully enlightened beings, knowing from the start who and what we are, capable of only loving and well-being and being fully present? For the lessons we can learn. When I hear about a 10-year-old child in my city being beaten to death by his parents after years of being abused, after being made to eat his own vomit as punishment for throwing up in fear, I don't give a shit about preserving free will or valuing lessons learned. I just want it to stop. And I'm angry at that, which is larger than myself, for allowing it to go on and creating and sustaining a reality where such injustice and suffering is possible in the first place. What kind of a loving intelligence would allow such suffering? Filled now with a rage that frightens me, I cannot sit down. The ground is rocky and uneven, and the trees too dense to allow me to run, so I begin to climb the cliff that rises beyond my campsite. Needing to exert myself physically, I scramble as fast as I can up on the steep slope, clinging to the trees perched on the rocky outcropping until I come to a broad ledge and collapse, exhausted. The rock face at my back is a mix of pink feldspar and creamy quartz, a rough surface of gleaming crystal set in a light gray granite. All I can hear is the sound of my own ragged breath. Suddenly, overwhelmingly tired, I lie down in the lichen-covered ledge. Slowly, my breath returns to normal, and I fall asleep there, high above the tops of the trees that surround my campsite, slipping into dreams, muttering a desperate why. And I dream. I'm in a field of tall grass and wildflowers, and the sun warm on my back. One of my grandmothers stands next to me and points to the around us. This capacity to let love act in the world through you. And this world is a place that you can realize what you are fully. So suffering is. Rosalie shakes her head at my mental gymnastics. Araya, beauty. These things are attributes of the mystery itself, and the real. It's the purpose. What can be higher than these? They are not means to an end. Realizing them, living them, is why you're. And this realization is dependent on your having free will, which you may not always use wisely. I wake up on the ledge feeling warm by the sun in my dream, and slowly make my way down to the cliff and campsite and sit by the fire pit. For years I have unconsciously skirted my anger with God, afraid to acknowledge or feel my outrage at the suffering the sacred life force allows to manifest in the world. And so long as there is something within ourselves or the world that we cannot acknowledge and be with, we must keep moving, must avoid the deep stillness within and around us that is home we long for. I could not go home and rest in the arms of the beloved until I could face my rage. Now my anger spent, I follow my breath and simply sit with what is. We have free will and often make choices that cause suffering, but we can respond to suffering with love and compassion, realizing that our essential nature, what we are, is what we do. So without free will, this world would not be possible. And free will allows for the possibility of making serious mistakes. I cannot argue with this. I've known the reality of my own free will from a very early age. I hesitate to tell this next story. For fear of being considered to some a little crazy. But then it wouldn't be the first time that was true. All I can really do is tell you what happened. I forgot about it for many years. Literally did not think about it from the day after it happened until I remembered it when I was in my mid-20s. And then one day walking into a store downtown Toronto, I caught the scent of a woman's perfume as she passed me, and suddenly I remembered. It was like recalling a place you visited on holidays. The taste of papaya or a scent of the sea suddenly reminding you of a very specific day you had there. A day that seemed unforgettable at the time. It was not prodded by an overeager therapist or inspired by watching movies about the occult. In fact, I've never liked frightening movies, and at that point, I had not done any therapy. At the time, I told no one what I remembered, and I have told only very few people since. I'm very young, probably no older than 5. I'm in my bed, having said my bedtime prayers. Those strangely macabre ones, instructing God on what to do if I should die before I wake. I'm alone in the room and the door is closed. I like sleeping in the dark, and I'm feeling mildly upset about something. Perhaps I've been chastised for doing something wrong that day. Since I'm a diligent rule keeper, this is rare, but when it happens, I take it to heart. Or perhaps I'm picking up on some difficulty my parents are having, a disagreement or worries about money or father's health. I don't remember. I do remember lying in bed feeling mildly anxious about something and suddenly noticing a strange smell in the room. The smell makes me want to turn my face into the pillow and take shallow breaths, like the bitter smell of ether just barely covered with the scent of overripe apples or the cloying odor of unwashed body almost buried beneath the strong fragrance of expensive perfume. It is sweet, too sweet, and it makes my stomach turn. As the smell gets stronger, my mouth is flooded with an acidic taste that makes me swallow. A metallic taste like the one you get when your fork touches a filling in your tooth or when you bite down on a piece of aluminum foil accidentally left on a piece of chocolate. The temperature in the room suddenly feels cooler, shivering slightly, and I snuggle down into the covers and pull my blanket up over my chin. And then I hear the voices in my mind's ear, like the scent. They're too sweet, as if deliberately seeking to hide something unpleasant even as they offer comfort. Neither clearly male or female, they tell me that if I go with them, I'll feel better and everything will be all right. Their tone hints at forbidden treats, holding the promise of a place that is warm and blissfully carefree, seeks to entice. I feel my small body tense beneath the covers, and I can feel the lure of what they offer as something that would feel wonderful, but I'm suspicious and suddenly afraid that the pleasure would be short-lived and followed by something unpleasant, like candy that tastes wonderful but gives you a stomachache half an hour after it's eaten. Although I can feel the temptation to go with them, I suddenly know that with great certainty that they are bad voices, and I have the sense that saying yes to the voices does not mean that I will actually go anywhere physically, but that I will be declaring my intent and opening a door to being with these voices, to receiving their comfort and presence continually for a very long time. And so I pray. I say a prayer to God in my Sunday school class, to Jesus as I imagined him from the children's illustrated Bible in my parents' living room bookshelf. A strong, kind man, blessing the children under the trees on a sunny afternoon, after someone else has complained that the children should be sent home because they are too noisy and rambunctious. One of my favorite stories. A man standing on the waters of a raging sea, his long hair being wrapped around his face by the wind and the rain, holding his arms out to a small group of terrified fishermen being tossed about in a small boat, urging them to leave the boat and walk across the dark waves to him. I pray to God, to this Jesus, to protect me from the bad voices and send them away. Even at 5, I have a clear sense of the presence of that which is larger than myself, and when I pray on this night, that presence is there steady and strong and lovingly with me. But in the meantime, the message I get is clear. God cannot or will not send the bad voices away. Jesus cannot do nothing until I choose to say yes or no to the voices. The choice is completely mine. When I tell the voices that I will not go with them, they must leave. The presence I identify as God comes closer, and I imagine myself falling asleep, held in a large loving hand, as I have on many other nights. For 3 nights in a row, the bad voices came and asked me to go with them, and on each night I call on the loving presence I know to be with me. And it is there, but I can do nothing. I can offer me only, a silent witness, until I decide whether or not I will say yes or no to the voices. For 3 nights in a row, I tell the voices no and send them away. They have not returned since that time. Remembering this story as a young adult, I'm amazed that I even forget that I ever forgot such a vivid experience. It does not feel like a dream. I remember being wide awake, falling asleep only after the voices left, and I'm struck by how inconsistent this experience is with the gently sanitized Bible stories I was taught as a child. Being raised in a very liberal mainstream Protestant church, I can honestly say I don't remember ever hearing about them. I had no name for the voices, and told no one of my experience at the time. The thing that bothered me most when I remembered this experience at the apparent unfairness of it all, assuming for the moment that some sort of negative beings or energy did in fact visit me, since I chose to accept my own experience as real. How could a 5-year-old child be expected to make such a choice about whether or not to say yes to something, seductively offering her comfort and relief from her small anxieties? This was completely contrary to my adult assumptions about the need to protect children from taking the consequences of serious choices. But my experience at the time had not seemed to me to be at all unfair. I knew the presence of God as completely abiding love that simply would not interfere with my free will choice. To my 5-year-old heart and mind, not interfering with my free will choice seemed completely fair, an expression of the depth of love that enfolded and sustained me. Although I was tempted to go with the voices to seek relief from my fears and anxiety from their promises, I did not feel incapable of making this choice. I knew the voices were bad, and knowing this, I chose to send them away. It was my choice. It had to be. The strange incident in my early life planted within me the 2 seeds of certainty that each of us is deeply and consistently loved by the mystery that which is larger than ourselves, by the beloved that is always with us, and that each of us is completely responsible for our choices. This does not mean we always make the right choice. I have made and will no doubt make the choices that have caused suffering for myself or others. In the Tao Te Ching Lao Tzu, it reminds us that the Master trusts even those who are untrustworthy. Even knowing human frailties, the sacred mystery endows us with free will and does not interfere with the choices we make. This is how loved we are. And no matter what our choices are, the voice of the beloved still calls to us, still asks us to come home and rest. That's not Hater Patrol. Meditation on spaciousness. My experience of the essential nature of all that is has one of its strongest qualities spaciousness. The sense that what I am and what I am held by can include all. Loosely based on yoga meditation I read years ago, this meditation sometimes has a strange Alice in Wonderland feel to it, but it helps me tune into the reality of there being enough room for it all. For the moments of wisdom and the moments of foolishness, for the anger and for the fear that sometimes keep me from going home, and for the longing and reassurance that sooner or later comes to get me. Sit in a comfortable position. Take 3 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, allowing your body to let go of all tension and tiredness with each exhale. Let your body drop down and feel the support of the surface beneath you and the earth beneath that surface. Let go of all the places where you're holding on. Imagine your breath as a gentle hand, a ladle you can use to scoop out the different parts of your body, leaving them open and hollow inside. Breathe down into your feet, first one foot and then the other, imagining your breath on an inhale scooping out all but the outer layer of your foot. With the exhale, imagine each foot hollowed out, spacious and clear within. Repeat this process with each leg, letting the inhale scoop out the inside of the leg and the exhale simply dissolve all that was there. Maintain a sense of hollowness and spaciousness inside those parts of your body where you have directed your breath. Breathe into your back, first the lower back and then the middle and upper back, filling up your whole torso with light and air and feeling it become empty and spacious with the exhale. Breathe down into your hands and throughout your arms, the lower arms, elbows, upper arms, and up into the shoulders, allowing each breath to create an emptiness, a hollow sensation. Tripping. I swear I saw the lights flashing. That's the trees. Windward. My bad. Breathe down into your hands and throughout your arms, the lower arms, elbows, upper arms, and up into the shoulders, allowing each breath to create an emptiness, a hollow sensation in the center of your limbs. Breathe into your neck and throat, feeling the hollowness there, and up into your head, feeling a spaciousness open up there with the exhale. Sit for a moment breathing into the spaciousness of this hollow body you have created with your mind's eye, feeling the movement of the air in and out of the spaciousness at the center of yourself. Then, with each breath, imagine the hollowness filling with light and air, expanding your body, becoming larger. Imagine the spaciousness, so too your body growing larger, becoming as large as the room in which you sit, then as large as the building where the room is. Sitting now on a vast expanse of land, as large as a city, and then as large as a country or continent where you are. Keeping the sense of inner spaciousness, imagine yourself growing to the size of the planet and larger, to the size of a figure sitting on a planet as if the earth were a meditation cushion, and then larger still. Feel within you the spaciousness that holds it all the stars and galaxies, every world and movement, and every feeling of every creature, and still there is spaciousness, a vastness that could hold much more. Sit with this feeling and breathe into the vast emptiness. Then, when you are ready, begin to let yourself grow smaller, always keeping the sense of spaciousness within. On the exhale, feel yourself once again the size of the earth, the continent, and then the country, and the city or area where you are. Exhaling, come down to the size of the building you are on, the trees around you, the room you're in, and back to what you perceive as normal size. Breathe here, continuing to feel the spaciousness within you. Exhaling again, yourself grows smaller, becoming the size of a cushion, and then the size of a drinking glass, all the while keeping within yourself the awareness of the spacious emptiness within you. Exhale and feel yourself become the size of an apple, an acorn, a mustard seed. Sit with the sense of smallness within a sacred emptiness that can hold it all. Feel how even imagining yourself as small as a mustard seed, you have within you room for galaxies and worlds, space for all the ever-changing feelings and thoughts and sensations that pass through. Sit with this. When you're ready, on each inhale, begin to grow, gradually returning to what you perceive as your normal size, keeping a sense of hollowness, of emptiness at the center of your body. Gradually open your eyes and begin to move through your day with a sense of how what you are can include it all. Thanks for coming.